we're going to answer the question of why not Google Meet. That was a big deal. It came out in an email earlier this week, and we'll explain why here in a little bit. Are there any guidelines for students? We have a few for them. How do I protect the students and myself? And finally, how do I control the Zoom meeting? So let's jump right in. So the first question is, why not Meet? And here's the reasons why. First of all, after a meeting is done, so let's say I'm meeting with my class, my meeting is done, the kids leave, I leave the meeting technically isn't over, it stays open. So the kids can actually enter back into the room and actually continue talking. It has happened to some of our teachers here in the district, and that's the reason why. So when you saw that email come out from Christine Jones about Zoom being the primary application for communicating with our kids, that's the reason why. There is no recording option on mobile devices that I've seen that is good and that works with Meet. So that's another reason. And then this is just my personal preference. The video quality on a Google Meet is not good. It's adequate at best. So a lot of you that are in SPED, RSP, who are meeting with parents and you want them to see like IEPs, or you're meeting with kids and you want them to see something on the screen, Google Meet at best is usually garbled, and it's really hard to see what you want your kids to be looking at. So yeah, so it's, again, that last one is about me. That's just my preference. But for the most part, it's because the students can go back in after the meeting is finished and they can continue talking or be inappropriate. The meeting, I believe, doesn't end until, I think it's 7 days before it cancels. And then there's no recording option. So we do have some student guidelines, and these are just base guidelines. If you look at the top of this slide, I have it throughout the slide. So if you don't get it, we'll put it in the chat for you guys as well. It's the bit.ly, which will take you to a copy of this presentation. Feel free to click any of the links. There are links embedded, and feel free to make copies of whatever you want to. There are a couple examples that are in there that are my copies, and you can't have them. That's, again, me being selfish. But I did provide you with the link to make your own copy. And so that bit.ly is bit.ly/P, capital P, capital S, capital D, capital Z, OOM. So PSD Zoom. So we do have some student guidelines. Again, these are just some suggestions. If you don't have any guidelines whatsoever, it's a good place to start. One of those is no eating while they're in the Zoom. I don't know about you, but when I have my earphones in, I don't want to hear someone chomping on gum, chips, slurping up pasta, you name it. I want to keep it out of my ears, really. And not only that, but if they're using Chromebooks that are district provided, I don't want any of that mess going in the Chromebook. So no eating while you're in the Zoom. Hopefully not while they're not in the Zoom as well. Dress well, and I'm not saying they need to be in a suit, but at least wear something that's like school appropriate. If you want to have a pajama day, just remember that if you're working in pajamas, what pajamas they would wear to school on pajama day may be different than what they do at home. So, keep that in mind. Make sure you set those boundaries. We want our kids to stay muted until they're called on. You can use the raise your hand feature with your students. Both of my boys do distance learning with their teachers, and there's only about 15, 20 kids in their classes. And when students they have an answer to share, they just literally raise their hand and the camera picks them up. So that's plenty. But if you want to use the raise your hand feature, feel free. We want to remind our students to listen a lot. I know it's not like we're in the classroom where we can force things on our students. We want them to pay attention. We ask for their attention. Look at me. But at home, they're going to have a lot of different distractions. They're going to have, their siblings running around, mom and dad's making dinner. Things are going to happen. So we want to make sure that people are paying attention and just remind them. We really want them to understand and listen to you and the people in the class. and we want them to be respectful. And then some other things to remember: others can see everything. So remove distractions around you. If they do have to get up to go do something, remind them to turn off their camera. And then a specific reminder, because I'm sure it's happened: if the kids pick their nose, we'll all see it. So we want to make sure that the kids are protecting themselves and also not embarrassing themselves, because they are on camera. I think that sometimes they forget that they're on display. So lately in the news, there's been this new term called Zoom bombers. A Zoom bomber is someone who pops into a meeting who was not invited. And so we do have some guidelines to help you with that, some teacher settings that we're going to look at. This is a link. It will take you to a document with some other settings that we're going to look at live as well. But if you ever want to take a look at that, that is embedded. So on that note, let's go live so we can see some of those settings. Some of these will be basic. Some of these will be more advanced, but there are a lot of settings to look at. So I'm already logged in because, like I said, this is my third time coming in here for our meetings today. And when I go to look at my account, I'm going to come down to the fifth choice down at the bottom, and that's the settings. Settings are very robust. I'm going to say it again. You're going to hear me say there are so many settings, so many times. And the reason is because there is so much to worry about in the Zoom meeting. There are 3 sections of settings. We're only going to deal with the meeting, but there are settings for recording and for telephone. So just to warn you, there are some other things we can look at. And if you ever want to take a look at those, set an appointment with me and we'll sit down and we'll look at each of those settings for the meetings. So I'm going to apologize now. I might go a little fast. I will stop and I will go into greater detail on the ones that are super important. The ones that are kind of your choice, I'll kind of breeze past and just let you know, or I'll just skip right over it. So 5 sections that are inside the meeting. So the first one is in scheduling meetings. So the first setting is host video. So I'm the host. And so when I open up the Zoom meeting, if you were waiting for me to start the meeting, when it opened up, you saw me at the very beginning. That's because I turned on the host video. For all of you, as you came in, I had participant video off. So when you came in and then you turned on your video, we were able to see you. But it looked like most of you kept yours off, and that's what we want. So host video, we want on. Participants video, that's up to you. I turned it off because to have all 120, or like the earlier groups, 300 people coming in, all that bandwidth coming in at once, that's how things really go bad with Zoom. Audio type, you always want to select telephone and computer audio. The reason is because some of our students will be on the go with their parents, and it may be that they may have to call in and listen to your meeting or listen to your synchronous lessons. So we need to make that available. Also, they may have a device where it's video only and no audio. So they'll use the phone for the audio while they're watching the meeting on their device. So we want to make sure that telephone and computer audio are on. The next one is join before host. So if you waited for this meeting to open, you probably got a window that says something to the effect of waiting for the host to start the meeting. You want this to be turned on. Well, I'm sorry, I strike that. You want it to be turned off. When it's turned on, that means that the meeting has been opened automatically, and students can come in and chit chat and do student things before you get there to monitor. So we want to make sure join before host is off. So I'm going to say that again. The default for you should be that you keep join before host off. All right. Personal ID doesn't really matter for you guys. Only authenticated users can join meetings. We want this one turned off. Here's why. Students do not and should not have Zoom accounts. I'm going to let that sink in for a second. Students do not and should not have Zoom accounts. So I know you're thinking, well, how do I get students into my classroom if they don't have accounts? We'll talk about that later on in the settings. But we don't want students going into ClassLink and adding Zoom. In fact, it's not available to them. We do not want them doing that. We don't want parents setting up personal accounts so that their students can come in and join. They don't need an account. They can join in other ways. So we want to make sure that only authenticated users are turned off. So again, I'm gonna reiterate that. Students should not have accounts. They should not be signing up. They should not be downloading any of the Zoom apps, and they should be joining through the browser. And again, I'll talk about that down the line with the settings. So the next one is require a password when scheduling new meetings. That's up to you. Understand it's an extra layer of security, but that also brings with it an extra layer of problems. Students not putting in the right password or losing the password. I would recommend keeping this off and using the waiting room. We'll get to the waiting room a little bit down the line. Require a password for instant meetings. That doesn't matter. Require a password for personal meeting ID. Doesn't matter. Embedding password or requiring password, we want those both turned off. So these two guys turned off. When the students join by phone, it will sometimes ask them for a password, but again, an extra layer of security. Muting participants upon entry. So when you guys first came into the room, you were automatically muted in the meeting. And that's so that way you guys really can't start chit-chatting amongst you guys and using bandwidth. But think about it from students. Most likely they're going to say, hey, what's up? How's it going? Haven't seen you in a couple weeks. But we don't want to open it up for any other problems. So for you, you want to have this one turned on. And a little bit later, we'll talk about how you can keep them muted and they cannot unmute themselves. Upcoming meeting reminder, that one, it doesn't matter. That's not an important setting. So the main ones in scheduling a meeting are going to be at the very top of the first three: hosting a video on, participant video off, audio type, telephone, join before host off. Everything else after that is completely up to you. Mute participants, again, that's your choice. I chose to turn it on because it's easier for me, but that's going to be your choice. Try that out with your teams and see how you like that. All right, in meeting. So you've scheduled it, and now what are the settings for inside the meeting? First one, don't worry about. Second one is chat. You guys are all in a chat, and I've restricted that chat. I'll talk about the settings there. But we want to make sure that our kids can talk at least to you. And again, we'll go into more detail. So I have that one turned on. Private chat turned off. Private chat is where one member of the meeting and another member of the meeting can have a chit chat between the two of them. Again, we don't want that. We can't monitor that. So we want to make sure that one's turned off. Auto-saving chats, we want turned on. It'll save the chats as you work. Play a sound when participants join or leave. So if I did that as people came into our meeting and left our meeting, it would make a ding sound every single time. But if I did that for this meeting or the ones earlier today, it would sound like a doorbell ditch type thing where they sit in there, ring the doorbell, ring the doorbell, ring the doorbell. That's all we would hear. In a class of 30 to 35, or if you are dual immersion and you've got 54 technically on you and your partner's roster, I would turn that on, but that's up to you. The reason I would have it on is that way you can hear when someone comes in or someone leaves. If someone comes in, you want to be able to see who it is. And we'll talk about the waiting room here in a little bit. If someone leaves, it'll tell you who it is, and maybe they dropped off and they didn't mean to leave. So it's just alerting you that they've left. So that can be an important one as well. File transfer, it's literally what it says, that your participants can send you a file. I don't see a big need of this if you're using Classroom. Feedback and display experience, I have turned off. Again, that's up to you. Co-host, dual immersion specifically. Excuse me. If you and your partner teacher want to host a meeting together, have this part turned on, one of you starts the meeting, then you designate the co-host of that meeting. One of the questions that came up earlier in the other meetings today was, should we have one of our students monitor the chat? You know, if you're not watching the chat, do I really want a student monitoring that chat? Probably not, because that gives them the ability to message other people. And again, that's not monitored. So we want to make sure that it's just you or another adult monitoring that chat. You can put a poll out to the audience. I haven't played a lot around with that very much, but you do have that ability. Allow host to put attendee on hold. I can make you leave for the meeting for a little bit and then bring you back in. So it's sort of like sending a student to the classroom next door because they're misbehaving. You can send them out and then bring them back in. Or if you're playing a game where maybe you and the participants are coming up with something they have to guess, and this person is leaving the meeting not to hear the chit chat. There's a lot of ways you can use that properly. Don't worry about the meeting controls or the Zoom windows during screen share. Specifically screen sharing though, we want that turned on so that way you can share what might be on your screen, but we want to restrict that to host only. Now you can change this during your meeting, so that way if you want to have another student share, you can open that up and you can do that on the fly. You don't have to do it in your main settings. But I would definitely start with host only, because if you have all participants, they're all going to be trying to jump on just to check on it because it's a button and they're going to want to push it. So use that. I would say host only. And so your desktop screen share doesn't matter. Annotation doesn't matter. Whiteboard, Steve and I are playing around with that a little bit. I might pop it up at the very end, but you can actually have a whiteboard that pops up and you can annotate on it. We're going to take a look and see how it works on the iPad. Is it any better than using it on the desktop? So you can turn on a whiteboard, but it also allows all of your participants all at once to start drawing on that whiteboard. Remote control, we have off. Nonverbal feedback, we have off. And then allow removed participants to rejoin. So again, if someone drops off on accident, maybe they close their Chromebook or they accidentally hit the close button, which happens often, they can come back into the meeting. It doesn't block them. That's all the basic settings. I mean, like I said, there's a lot. And we haven't even gotten to the in-meeting advanced yet because I have to go over those. Those are very important. So in-meeting advanced, you have the ability to create a breakout room. I'm going to explain why this should be turned off and why you shouldn't use it. So you have a class of 30. You put them each into groups of 5. What Zoom will do is give them access to chit chat between each of the groups, and then you can bring them back in. The teacher can then enter each group and check on their progress on whatever. There's got to be so much trust between the teacher and the students. I mean, you got to really know your students to really figure out how they would act during those breakout rooms, because they are unmonitored unless the teacher is in it, and they are not being recorded. So you gotta max out that trust. I'm thinking of some of my best classes I've ever had, and I don't know that I would have turned that on. So really consider that. I would highly suggest, for your safety, keep it off. Remote support, that one's turned off. Closed captioning, for those of you in the deaf and hard of hearing department, there is closed captioning, but the way that works is that you have to have a second host or yourself type as you talk. So you know how sometimes when people talk about how they email someone and they actually, they make the motion with their hands. Well, while you speak, you actually have to type, so that there is no embedded closed captioning. Language interpretation, I haven't seen this one yet. The way I envision it by the description is that you can designate someone as the interpreter, sort of like maybe for sign language. And while you're talking, you could have the sign language down in another corner of the screen. Again, I haven't had a chance to explore that one. Far in camera, group HD, that one doesn't matter. Virtual background. So I have it turned off because with 132 of you, I think you guys might go nuts with it, and that's okay. But think about it with your students. There's benefits and there's drawbacks. A benefit would be that a lot of our students have a lot of stuff going on at home, and it kind of creates a barrier for the host to only see the participant. It kind of puts in its own little green screen behind the student. I have it turned off because and I go back to my boys being on their distance learning, as I hear often with their teacher, I see a lot of people messing around with their backgrounds. Please stop, it's distracting. So imagine our students, the first time they get a virtual background, switching in between. And to be honest, Steve and I, if you've seen some of our podcasts, some of our earlier ones, we use Zoom to record those. We put a background on us, but we also don't change it 100 times during the meeting. So I would highly suggest that you do that. If you do that, you structure it and don't just let it go right through, and let it be a free-for-all. Identify guest participants in the meeting. I want to see your names. I want to know who you are. Auto answer group and chat. I have that one turned off. I haven't explored that one all too much. Default email just means it's using my Palmdale address to send out an email. I'm not worried about Outlook. I'm not worried about stereo audio or selecting the original sound in the settings. But here's, I think, is the most important setting of all of them, one of two, with the waiting room. All of you came right into the meeting. I can actually close the door on that and make anybody new to my meeting go through the waiting room. And that way I can identify who the person is and either allow them in or deny them entry into my meeting. So waiting room, to me, is a non-negotiable. It's one that you should automatically turn on no matter who you're meeting with. I have meetings with teachers today after our meeting here, and I'm going to make sure that waiting room is on. I don't want them just dropping in. I want to make sure I know who they are. So waiting room is huge. And then the equal importance for all of your students is the show a join from browser link. What that does is it bypasses the need for the students to download the Zoom application. So if they're on a Chromebook or they're on an iPad or whatever device they might be on, it will use their browser to access your class or your meeting and not have to worry about going through an app. So that one we want to turn on. That is huge. I can tell you from all the emails we've gotten this week, it's almost every time they're trying to download the app. They're trying to download the app. They should not be downloading the app. We need to go into the settings and turn on join from browser. And then the last setting that I'm going to go over, allow live streaming meetings. All three of those should be turned off. We talk about protecting student privacy. The last thing we want to do is have students on Facebook, on teacher Facebook, with our meetings here. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Like, you guys are being recorded right now. You should record your meetings. And let me preface this because I know Steve's going to say the same thing as he goes and answers. We want to record as a protect yourself. Think about it this way. If I have Mrs. Stuckey contact my principal and say that Mr. Hopman said all these things during the broadcast, my principal comes to me and says, Mrs. Stuckey said that you were talking about all this stuff that's inappropriate. Is it true? I can pull up the meeting and say, here's what we talked about, and I can prove one way or another what was said. Now, those really should not be shared as an extra thing in your classroom or as a missed meeting in the classroom, unless there's no students being shown. So if you have all of your students with their videos off, go ahead and post the meeting. But if you can see students in the recording, then that meeting needs to stay out and it needs to stay with you. It's like taking a picture in our classroom and putting it up on our wall. That stays with us. But we'll take it down, and when it's time, like for back to school nights, we'll take those down if they're not allowed to be seen outside of our school. So live stream, don't stream to Facebook. Do not take snapshots with your phone and put it up on Facebook about all your students. Keep it in your classroom, in this case, your home, your computer. Okay, and I know we were already getting emails about all the different, I was joking around, all the different IRPA laws, FERPA, HERPA, all of them. My advice, it's to protect you. Don't let it go any farther than that. If you want students to see an asynchronous lesson, record yourself doing it, post that into the classroom. Don't post your synchronous or live sessions in the classroom. All right, Steve, I am out of breath. I think that's all the settings. I know we have questions, not as many as last time, but what can we answer?
Okay, so let's take a look at the list. And no, it's not so bad yet. I mean, yeah. It gets worse towards the end.
That's right.
All right, so can the parent call any number that is provided to be dialed into the Zoom meeting? You know, that big information that's made up and it shows, these are the phone numbers Zoom provides, dial by your location. I can probably share that question to everybody if you want me to.
Yeah, that's fine.
So they can see what it looks like.
Yeah, it lists a ton of numbers that they can call to access it. Yeah.
Can I stop sharing your screen for right now?
Yeah, let me pop off. Go ahead.
All right, thank you.
You got it.
Make sure I have the right screen. I don't have the right screen up, so let's try another one. How about the desktop would be perfect.
There you go.
So here's the question that was asked. So part of the meeting that's set up is they provide information for people to be able to phone in. One of the settings was to allow video and phone connections into the meeting.
Right.
And can they call from any of those? I would say, yes, they can if they just want to call in on a phone. However, if you provide the link and they have some kind of internet capability, I think they could probably join in just by the link without having to dial.
Yeah, and also they can also not. So if they have a device that has no video and only has audio, they can still join and just listen in or interact verbally that way. So yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
Okay, so the next one was, what if they have the Zoom app? For instance, I have a Zoom app and my 4th grade daughter attends a Zoom meeting. Will that affect anything?
I would say that, so I'm assuming that the daughter has it as using a non-PSD email address. It's not that it'll affect anything. We don't want students to be able to create their own meetings. That's the biggest thing. So if you're controlling your daughter, by all means, I mean, if she's using a personal email address, we can't stop that. But if she's using, we just don't want them using their PSD information.
How does turning off the virtual background remove the host's ability to put up a background?
It does. In fact, I tried it and I cannot, because in my settings I have it turned off. But I know, and I'll pull Steve up here for a second. I know that with Steve, he can actually turn his on, I believe. So you go ahead and try turning yours on.
Sure.
I believe he can turn it on, even though I've got it turned off. So he can turn his on. I cannot, because I have my setting turned off. So that's why we want to make sure that, again, it's up to you, completely up to you. But again, think about those students that you have, the ones that'll sit there and I know because my son was one of them. My youngest one, Braden, I get a letter from, or I get an email from his teacher. Can you talk to Braden about all 30 of his backgrounds? And he had gone to Bermuda, he'd gone to France, he'd gone to Japan. So we stopped that.
Okay, so there's more. Do your videos record? When your videos record, do they save automatically?
Yes. So it's a little bit different on the iPad. And I'm going to be honest, I have not used the iPad yet to record. That's one of the things I might try to do today just to test it. But for the most part, if you have it set up to record, so if I go up to this recording section right here, one of the choices is to automatically record when you start the meeting. I turn that off. I usually start it manually. That way, if I start sometimes I'll open up my meeting early, like I did today. I opened it up about an hour early because I was eating and kind of wanted to give myself as much time as possible. I started it after the meeting actually started. So if it were me, I would just start it when my meeting starts manually.
Was it mentioned how to initiate a recording of a meeting?
It was not. So to initiate the recording, and again, I can't show you my controls because Zoom blocks them from you because they want you to be able to see everything on the screen. But there's a more button that you hit while you're presenting, and I'll talk a little bit about it when I could talk about controls, and you would go more and record.
And I think when you're a host, down at the bottom next to the chat, I think there's a record button to click on that too.
Yes.
All right. And then how can I change my display name if I don't want my first name displayed?
That is a good question. As a host, I think I can rename myself as the host. Let me do that. Well, actually, that would be you. Let me go to me. And I should be able to rename myself. There we go. Yeah, so I renamed myself to Mr. Hoffman.
I just renamed myself too.
He's Batman. But my question, so here's my question is does it really matter? I mean, if they know your first name, because remember on all their official documents, like their report card on Infinite Campus, I think somewhere even in Google Classroom, unless you change it, it's got your real name anyway. So, again, that's up to you. But yeah, you can change that.
You're welcome. If you guys could, I know you're thankful. Please don't. It makes me have to dig deep to find all the questions when we ask other comments and make other comments. And that was it. Click on the 3 dots in the upper corner. So that was answered they weren't questions.
Perfect.
Hey, I think that is where we're at. Yep. Keep going.
All right. Awesome. So when you go to create your meeting, and so I'm going to create the meeting, I'm going to show you that inside of Zoom here. It's a little bit different with the app because I know a lot of people ask about that scheduling a meeting. How do they get that information to the parents? So here's where you name the meeting. So I have it set as my meeting, the day and the time, how long is the meeting going to last? That's not a countdown. That doesn't mean at the hour mark, you're going to lose everything. But the big thing is because for the most part, you might be having all your meetings all on the same time.
I'm going to give you a timeout real quick because I did skip one, and it's one that goes back to the setting conversation. I really apologize.
All right, go ahead.
But the clarification is that because you had streamed to YouTube and Facebook on.
Correct.
And we say don't do that.
So the reason that we have that on there is that Steve and I, when we do our podcasts, we were testing the ability to stream to YouTube, and it actually works super well. But for your purposes, we don't want you to have that on. So make sure it's unchecked. So let me go back. If I go to my settings, and I'll go down to my advanced settings and go all the way down to the bottom. These would be turned off. So now I have no ability of live streaming. So just make sure you understand that those need to be turned off, okay? But like I said, we were testing it out to see how it would work. So in my meetings, I'm going to schedule a new meeting. We'll call it my meeting, the time that it happens and the date. Again, the duration does not mean at the end of an hour you lose your meeting, it just drops out. It's just letting the person know that you're inviting how long the meeting should last. Under time zone, underneath that, you'll see recurring meeting. I understand that you'll be having probably about the same time every day going synchronously with your students or with your PLCs. Be very careful with that, because that means that the link that you get, and I'll show you the link after I'm done creating the meeting, the link you will get will be the same link over and over and over and over. And so what happens is that link becomes active every day at 2 o'clock. So if something happens and you can't make it and you don't cancel the meeting, students can still enter in, or at least try. For security reasons, I would go ahead and just not make a recurring meeting. Set them up separately while you're doing that. Here's where you can make those decisions on the fly for the video and the audio. And then again, for the basic meeting options. Remember, there's many, many more settings inside of Zoom. So these are just the basic settings. You can enable your waiting room. You can enable the join to host or enable it. Record the meeting automatically. This would be all right here in those meetings. Okay. Like I said, I could go over most of those settings for another hour or two, but I want to keep us rolling. And so let's go back to the presentation and talk about some of the settings that come across, or what the views look like in Zoom. So when you go into Zoom for the first time, you might get a screen that looks like this, or at least if you have the teacher app, the orange button means you'll start an instant meeting. You name it and you go. The plus sign is a join a meeting in progress. So you get a 9-digit code or a 10-digit code. You put that in and it takes you right into the meeting. So you might have shared that with your PLCs. It also gets put into the link that comes with the invitation. And I'll go back and show the invitation here in a second. The schedule allows you to set up those future meetings. And then the share screen allows you to share your screen directly into a room without having to join first, then share your screen, as long as they've enabled it. Let me come back into the Zoom meeting, because I just remembered that I forgot to show you that with the meetings. So I create my meeting, and when I'm done, I save it. And then here's the confirmation. So the date and the time. Here's the link that goes into Google Classroom. I can copy that invitation. Here's what it looks like. Here's all those phone links. And by the way, it's Pacific, I think it's Central East is the way they have that set up. There's the link. Here's the 9-digit code. You would copy this meeting invitation or copy the link in the meeting and put that into Google Classroom, put it in Remind, put it into Class Dojo, put it in an email, however you want to let your participants know about the meeting. I'm going to go ahead and delete this meeting because I'm not going to use this meeting. So you start a meeting. What happens next? So what do you see? This is the part I can't show you because it blocks all of you from being able to see my screen. So you will see something like this. So the person in the middle, you'll see Dwayne Johnson. By the way, I looked it up. He was the most famous person as of October 2019, so I thought I'd use him. This is what happens when you ask Alexa who the most important or the most famous person in the world is. And so whoever's the main person talking is in the middle. So right now it should be the presentation I'm showing and possibly all the participants off to the side. It depends on what your view is of the entire presentation. You as the participant can control that. As the host, I cannot control necessarily what you see. So you want to make sure that your students can see your screen. So it's often Steve and I'll be presenting and I'll say, hey, Steve, do you see my screen? And he'll say, yeah, I do. Or, hey, no, I only see this, or I only see that. So we want to make sure that our students can see it. So I numbered everything 1 through 12 down at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and go through each 12, and that'll give you kind of a basic idea of what goes into a meeting and how to keep track of it. So the number 1 is that mute button. So the mute button literally will mute your microphone. So right now I'm talking, everything's fine. I'm going to hit that button. Now when I unmute it, you can hear everything that I'm saying. So when you're doing this at home, and I know a lot of you have kids at home, I know I do, and they're running around behind you or they're coming to ask you a question, ask your participants to hold on a second and mute yourself. And ask your participants to do the same. Number 2 is the little arrow next to the mute button. That one allows you to test your speaker and microphone and go into your audio settings. So I told you at the very beginning when I showed you the penguin video about how I had lost audio. For some reason, my computer decided to switch to a microphone I don't even have. So I had to go in and manually change it and get everything back on track. So that's where you would do that. The start video button literally is what it says. You can start or stop your video. If the line is through it like it is there in the picture, it means that there's no video. So that's an important one as well. So if you can see me right now in the video, you can see that I'm looking at the camera, I'm smiling. If I'm off, you can't see anything. I'm gone. So if I turn it back on, there we go. There's my smiling face again. So same thing. If you have something going on around you you need to take care of, mute yourself, stop your video, let your participants know, take care of it, and then come back and ask them to do the same. The arrow, number 4, is the same. It's the selection you see. There's different video settings that I'm going to let you explore when it's time. Number 5 is the invite. You can click invite and it will come up and give you all the codes that you can email people and let them know what your meeting is or when it is and what it is. Number 6 is the manage participants. When you click on that, you can see everyone in your meeting. And if you go down to the more button down on the bottom right, it allows you to mute all the participants on entry. If you uncheck the second selection, which is allow participants to unmute themselves, it takes away the ability for them to unmute themselves. So right now, you guys can try, but you've all been muted. You cannot unmute unless I unmute you as the host. So that's really important, especially if you have a student who has a noisy background and it's taking over the meeting. Because I don't know if you notice that whenever Steve talks, his picture comes up. And whenever I talk, my picture comes up. So if you have a noisy background on one of your videos, one of your participants, and they're unmuted, it will take over the presentation. So you want to make sure that you are muting everybody. The third selection, play the enter-exit chime. So we talked about that in the settings. That's important with the waiting room. So in the waiting room, when someone pops in, you can see who it is and allow them in. And so that enter-exit chime is the doorbell asking to be let in. The fourth one is allowing you guys or the participants to rename themselves. I've done that. And you can do that as well. So if I look at all the participants here, let me pull up my screen. And let me see, I've got a whole lot of people. So let me see, I've got Connie Brambilla from Tumbleweed on here. I'm going to rename her as whoops, Mrs. Brambia. And if you can see all the participants' names, you can see, and she'll be able to attest that I changed her name. So you have that ability as well. And I'll talk a little bit about that when I get to the participants a little bit more. I can also lock the meeting. That means I don't let anybody in. So if I were to lock the meeting right now, I'm at 126 participants. I cannot let any more in. I can stop them. And then the very last selection is lower all hands. So if you allow raising their hands or dropping their hands, you can lower everybody's at once. So you could say, hey, I want you to raise your hand if you can hear me. You see all the hands come up. You can lower everybody's all at once. So that's a pretty good menu to have. The next one is the share screen one. I'm going to go over number 8 first. This is where on the fly, I told you about sharing the screen, where you can allow participants to share their screen. Right now, you guys cannot do that, only Steve and I, but I can give you those advanced options to do that. I can change it on the fly and allow my participants to then share their screen. But if you notice, if I did that, only one participant at a time can have it up there. So I don't want multiple participants to sit there and try to fight for it. So use it with discretion and understand that there's going to be some management that goes into that. But when you do share the screen, it looks a little bit like this. So it's going to give you the selection of using your desktop. It's going to give you the selection of using your iPhone or iPad via AirPlay, just like you would do in the classroom when you're using your iPad as the document camera. So if you have that sitting on something, I know there's been a lot of videos on YouTube about making a makeshift iPad stand. That would be a great way of displaying stuff that's going on with your iPad. You can also connect it via cable. I haven't been able to try that one out, but from what I read, it's pretty darn good. And then the bottom ones are going to be the ones where you can display like only Chrome. Like right now, you guys are only seeing my Chrome desktop. But if I have another window with Benchmark in it, or another window with my Google Hangout chat going on, you'll be able to see those as well. But you get to choose what the students see. And that to me is the biggest deal. Now, I talked about the whiteboard. The whiteboard is in here right now, and I'm going to try something new only because we've got the smallest amount of participants that we've had so far. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen for a second, and I'm going to share a whiteboard. So here is the whiteboard. Let's say I'm going over maybe what 2 plus 2 is. And if you guys went up to the top and next to the meeting ID button, you'll see sort of like a mini rectangular box. You'll see something that says Annotate on Whiteboard or something to that effect. Go ahead and try that. Like I said, it's the first time we've had a chance to try something like that. What's that, Steve?
I'm not seeing it.
Let me try it. It should be sharing. Let me stop it again. Let me try it again. Like I said,
Do you have it set to multiple participants can share simultaneously next to share screen?
I thought I did, but let me go back and change it. Yeah, it looks like it popped off. So I'm going to go back to Whiteboard. All right, now do you guys see it?
No.
Huh, interesting. I'm sharing it. It says it's being shared.
Oh, hold on. No, I can now. I can join now. Here we go. Okay. It's gonna. I believe. Let's see. Let's see if I'm writing on the same one. Am I right? No, I'm not.
Interesting.
I can only see mine. Oh, let's try this one. Oh.
No, I don't see any of your stuff. Interesting.
Probably good. Let me try one more time. Hold on.
All right.
Nope.
Interesting. Well, we'll play around with it a little bit more. Like we said, it's the first time we've had a chance to really play around with that. Although now I'm seeing yours. Did you share yours?
I did share it. You see a bunch of hearts and stuff on there?
Yeah, and now I'm seeing Marlene Hernandez's screen. So this is going to be the problem. You're going to start seeing people jump on. So I'm going to stop sharing your guys' screen.
Yeah, please. Oh.
Yeah, that's what we were afraid of. So
maybe one of you guys will get really good at it and tell us how to do it.
That's right. All right, so I just turned all of you guys off. So let me go ahead and stop all your screens.
Boy, they all jumped in on that, just like the kids will. I'll tell you that much.
That's right.
Like having 123 people going, hey, I'm going to do a whiteboard.
That's it, exactly. So we don't want to do that. All right, so my screen should be back up. Do you see my Chrome screen now?
Yes.
Awesome. All right.
Where you get to choose. Yep, go
possibly. For it. All right. So that's where you would do that. So that is the share screen. Only because we had a fraction of what we've had this morning. So that's why we decided, or at least I decided to try that. The next button, number 9, is the chat. So you guys are all sending Steve and I questions. I have it restricted only to us. So I can stop it from everybody, or I can make it go public. So you may pose a question to your class and allow everyone to respond by writing their answer. When you're done accepting the answers, change it to no one. And then you can go through all the answers. And then when you're ready, change it back to host only. But remember, when you go everyone publicly, that means you're allowing everyone to chit chat back and forth. So again, use that with structure. Oops. Number 10 is the record button. It does exactly what it says. It'll ask you, do you want to save it locally or to the cloud? I'm going to be honest, I have not tried to record it to the cloud yet, but that's on my list of stuff to try. So I have it saved locally. Locally means it's on my laptop. It saves it into a file called Zoom. And then I can take that file once it's done. I can put it into Google Drive, and I can save it there for me to use as a backup in case a parent comes back to complain or I need it for something. Remember, if you see students' faces, for me, just to keep on the safe side, I probably wouldn't put that in my classroom for everyone to see. I want to keep control of it. So again, use your professional judgment. Again, it's above us as far as what the recommendation is, especially for like SPED and RSP and all them. Really go by what your admin is telling you to do. And I know our boss, Chris Jones, is having those conversations as well. And I know she's been getting the emails about it consistently. Number 11, this is where I told you I crossed it out using the break rooms. Don't do it. You're risking a lot. A lot of things can happen inside the breakout room, and it doesn't record. It doesn't allow you to monitor unless you are actually in that meeting. So, like I said, be very careful. Reactions, I didn't number that one. I'm going to come back to that one last. Number 12, end meeting. If you are the host, make sure you end the meeting for everyone. You can actually, if I wanted to right now, I could leave the meeting as the host, but keep everything going the way it is. That's the same problem that we were having with Google Meet. But in this case, it's all being worked on in Zoom. We want to end that meeting completely for everyone. And so as the host, it'll ask you, do you want to end the meeting for you or for everyone? So make sure you make that selection. And then the final button is that reactions, something that's brand new, as in literally last week. They've added in the ability to use emojis to clap, raise your hand, give a thumbs up, amongst a couple other things. But not all devices have that ability. Chromebooks do not have that ability. Just like Chromebooks do not have the ability of doing a virtual background. So just keep that in mind, that as students are working, that they may not see everything you do. It's just dependent on their device. And then lastly, You may see a more button. You may not see a more button. It depends on where you are and what you're looking at. My more button has a whole lot more than a lot of people's because I have a lot of things turned on. What it does is if I'm sharing my screen like I am now, it takes a lot of these buttons and puts it in the more selection. But when I come out of share and my toolbar down at the bottom increases, for me, it only keeps the streaming choices. So if you have no streaming choices, which you shouldn't, because you should keep that turned off, then you should have nothing under more or nothing at all. And that is all the different buttons that are possible inside of Zoom. There's a ton of them. So Steve, I know I've been seeing that chat button blink and blink and blink and blink. What questions do we have?
Well, I've only got 5. How do you actually invite students through Google Classroom?
Yes.
Or.
Yeah, use that link to invite them through Classroom. Use it to invite them through Remind, Class Dojo.
Google Calendar.
Google Calendar. I mean, literally, we could sit there and give you a whole bunch of different ways to invite students. So use what's best for you. We recommend Classroom or Calendar.
Even when I'm hosting, I don't have anything to the right of the chat icon where you were talking about the record button. Check your settings, I think. See that you should be able to record.
And if you have and if you're recording and you have nothing next to the chat button, then that means that you don't have the reactions and you don't have the more button. So that's all that's really at the other side of that chat button. So don't worry about that too much.
You probably mentioned this, and I'm saying this because we did mention it, but do kids need to download Zoom?
No.
No.
Do not want students downloading or creating their own accounts.
They need to make sure they join using the browser.
That's right. So I'm going to say it again. No downloading the app. It will not, in fact, class link is unavailable. Do not create your own account with their Palmdale School District email address. As soon as the district sees that come through, they're disabling the account. So they have no ability with a Palmdale School District student email to do that. We want students to join using that browser link.
All right. Can we find that page where you shared the screen? And I did answer this in the stream that I'm going to send the link out to your presentation again to everybody, and I will do that in the chat right now, and you'll talk about it in a moment.
I will.
And Steve, how do you set the chat function to only message the host? And that is actually in the chat when you click on chat. Yeah,
let me show you I'll show you that setting again. So here's the presentation. Let me go to, there's the chat. So you'll see, as a host, you'll see this 3 dots on the right-hand side, lower right of the chat box. No one, host only, everyone publicly. So that's the one that you want to watch out for.
How do we get to all of the settings that we need to adjust?
Zoom.us is the best way to do it. You can do it kind of in the app, but it's much better to do it on the website.
So remember, that's the website, www, if you want to remember as a website, .zoom.us, and you can log in there, and then you can click into the settings.
Correct.
Are you purposely changing the record in your background on the shelf, Mr. Stuckey? Thank you for paying attention, Adriana. And thank you for still calling me Mr. Stuckey. Just former student.
The respect she shows.
Ah, respect. Yes, you are my favorite student. Laugh out loud. And that's all I see in here right now.
That's awesome. All right, so what we'll do is we'll finish off the meeting, and then I'll stop recording, and then if there's any other ancillary questions, we will answer those. And
let me ask Adriana this.
Yeah.
Do you know which band it has been every time?
See, now if she was in a Google Meet, she may not know that because it would be so garbled. But in a Zoom meeting, it might be that clear.
Hey, waiting room on or off? On.
On, absolutely. Someone sent one to me. It says, Dan said during this meeting that we should record our Zoom meetings with our students to protect ourselves, as long as we don't share the recording. But my site principal said that no Zoom meetings are to be recorded. So what should I do? The beauty part about this is that right now our boss, Christine Jones, is on this.
And she's in the chat. She's in the meeting right now.
And she's in the meeting, so she heard that question just now. And so I have a feeling that that's been coming up on the admin side a lot. And she'll probably end up talking to the principals. Yes, Chris, I can unmute you. Hold on one second.
I don't know.
Can we trust her?
All right, Chris, you're up.
Wow, thanks for that. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, you know, we are letting principals know. We know that principals are looking out for your safety and security and student privacy, and they may not have gotten accurate information, or, you know, they're very busy too. They've been receiving hundreds of emails. I hope you understand that they have been bombarded. We are getting the information out to the principals. This is our recommendation. Our recommendation is that you do record the session. The session, when it's done, and Dan and Steve can attest to this, as soon as you end the meeting for your entire group, a little box will pop up that says recording, it's saving your recorded session. And that will just get saved to your computer that you're working on. It won't be saved with your principal. It won't be saved anywhere else. It's just for you. So I don't want you to feel pressure like somebody's going to watch that recording who shouldn't, or etc. So you're supposed to keep those recordings for yourself, and it really is just for your safety and security as well. Because if you are now appearing in somebody else's house, it's different than when you're in your classroom. When you're in your classroom, you have your doors and your windows and you're shut in and nobody else gets to see you except you and your little darlings. But now you are appearing as a live face in somebody else's home. And so there may be other people listening and watching. So please do not ever assume that you have any privacy while this is happening, because there will be no privacy. And keep in mind that your students we hope this doesn't happen. In fact, it's illegal, but your students may have a recording of you going on at the same time. So, you know, if there's ever a situation where something gets out and maybe somebody edits what you've said or reposts it in a way, you do have the original recording to show that that is not what was said and that is not what happened. So we are suggesting and recommending that you do record for your own security, but not to be republished. And keep in mind, when your students are in a Zoom place, don't post pictures of kids in public spaces. It's like any other time. You still have to keep their privacy. So if you're doing a website, don't put your kids' pictures on a website, you know, unless you have permission from their parents to do that. Same privacy rules apply. I've had questions, by the way, Dan. This one has been coming up, the FERPA question, so I want to address that. So FERPA is about your students' academic or educational records, and your parents have the right to request your students' academic records. If you are in a meeting face-to-face with your students, as long as you do not release any information about a student's academic record, you will not be in violation of FERPA. The same goes for Hipaa, and that has to do with a child's medical condition or medical records. If you do not talk about a child's medical condition or refer to a child's medical record, then you will not violate Hipaa. It's the same for when you are face-to-face. It's the same exact rule. If you don't talk about those things, then you will not violate FERPA and you will not violate Hipaa. That's all in protection of students' privacy. So really, there is no violation of FERPA or HIPAA or any other rule unless the teacher says something in the meeting that violates that law. So again, just keep it very professional. If you need to talk to a parent about a child's educational record, make sure you contact the parent. If you need to talk to a parent about a child's medical record, contact the parent. That's what you need to do. So I hope that clears that up. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, no problem. I know it clears it up for me because I know trying to understand or remember all the, we've been joking around all the IPA laws, trying to figure out which one's which one covers. So yeah, no, I'm glad. Thank you. All right, let's see here. It's a couple other questions that came to me and not to Steve. Let's see here.
Hey, so I think I got them too.
Okay, because there's some that say from to me, so that's why I just want to double check.
They say the same thing to me. I don't know.
Okay.
If you've created a meeting, am I able to go back in and change the settings for that meeting?
You have to do it yes and no.
Some settings.
Yeah, you have to do it within the settings they showed you when creating. It's a little bit different once you're in.
You said that if you're on a Chromebook that we would lose some of the functions. Did I hear that correctly?
That is correct.
I don't see the more button nor the raise your hand button.
Again, that's being on a different device. You may not have the ability to see that.
As a host, are you able to kick people out of the meeting, like unwelcome guests?
Yes. Let me see if there's anyone who I don't want to welcome right now. Nah, I won't kick anybody out. That'll be nice. But yes, you can. You can kick them out.
All righty. I see Farmer in there. No, that's not the same Farmer.
No,
Never
different
mind.
Farmer.
No, we like this Farmer. Sometimes can't upload my Zoom recording. Sometimes can't upload my Zoom recording to Google Classroom. I've been loading videos for those who miss online. Was it because it was a story read aloud?
No. It might be the size. I don't think Google Classroom has a size requirement for files. However, sometimes it makes it difficult. I know whenever I pull up my Google Classroom, I've got like 8 billion tumbleweed classrooms on there, and it bogs down. So that might be part of it. But if, like, I know one of the questions I saw for me was about Screencastify over. They did a Screencastify they wanted to show over Zoom, and was having the same sort of issue. It's just a matter of making sure that whatever you're using to record, it may just be too big of a file to upload.
Yeah, try not to do it in HD, for sure.
Yeah.
If you put a student on hold, is that student still able to view the meeting?
I don't know. Let me see. Let me see if I can put Steve on hold.
Uh-oh.
No, I can't because he's a host. Let's see here. Let me see if I can pick on someone.
Chris, would you turn your camera on, and he's going to kick you out of the meeting, and we'll see if you can still see it and let you back in.
So I'm going to put Chris on hold. She is on hold.
I'm going to take her off a hold.
All right, go for it.
Because as a co-host, I can do that. Were you able to still see what was going on?
Oh, man, mute her.
Guys
Sorry,
were
Chris.
completely gone while I was in hold. And by the way, it's the same with the waiting room. So when you put folks in the waiting room, they don't get to see anything, and they don't even get to see other people in the waiting room.
Yeah, so think of
So
it
like
as
a timeout box, penalty
That's
box.
right.
Hey.
I'm about ready to go on a timeout box.
Let's see. Your presentation shows the button for live streaming turned on. I think we answered that one.
Can we do Zoom meeting from an iPad?
Yes.
Isn't that what she said, not to repost the recording?
Correct.
Correct. However, understand this, Allison, is that you can create a recording with nobody in the classroom, because you might want to do a lesson that you have slides that you want to present and show, and you can record that and then actually put that into your classroom. And this becomes then your blended classroom, where the stuff that you make and record without participants becomes your asynchronous teaching, where most of this is going to happen. My suggestion would actually be create those little mini lessons, have students work on it, And then when it's time to meet with the group of kids during that synchronous time, it is a great opportunity to reach out and find out what more they need to know, what they struggled with, how else you can help them than giving so much direct instruction. Do the instruction with resources available, come back and work on what they don't know.
I maybe even use the synchronous meeting or the live meeting to rebuild that classroom culture instead of making it a learning opportunity. Barbara asked, does the blue tab on settings mean the feature is turned on or off? If it's blue, it's on. If it's gray, it's off.
Do we have to create a new meeting invitation every day for students, or can we reuse the same invitation more than once?
Just be careful. You're using the same link, and if that gets out there, you're just opening yourself up for some problems. So I would do it every day.
It's just as easy to repost a new link.
It really is.
How do I get other windows on to the screen, share screen? I've been clicking on window view and going up to browser tabs.
I'm guessing that if they're looking at window view, or they're not looking at the whole browser. So if I have multiple tabs open, I can tell Zoom to look at a specific tab, a specific program, or my entire desktop. So just be careful of that. You'll probably have to choose that and practice that one.
Right, because I can see that my choices are entire desktop, or I can just choose that browser that has the information I want to share on it.
Right, exactly. Do we have to make the setting changes every meeting? I would make all your setting choices at the very beginning before you create any meetings, and then make your schedule your meeting. But before every meeting, make sure you're checking your settings. Make that your practice, just to make sure. You never know.
Yeah, good practice is to check that before you go live, and then you have to try to figure it out on the fly. I'm sure once you become comfortable with it, figuring out these things on the fly will be no problem.
Yeah. Andrew was asking, is alternative host a co-host? I haven't seen alternative host yet, so I'll Andrew, shoot me an email and I'll look into it and I'll let you know.
What I've seen that if I, as a host, want to leave, I can assign somebody else as a host.
That might be it, yeah.
Just to confirm, as we post new meeting links every day, the old one will then be deleted and not able to be accessed at another time. If you don't open the meeting, no one can get in anyway.
As long as you have join with before host turned off.
There you go. Otherwise, It can be wide open.
Yep.
Are you going to have webinar on how to record lessons to post on Google Classroom? As a matter of fact, not through Zoom, but we're going to use Screencastify, and we'll use Zoom to teach you how to use Screencastify to make some quick mini lessons, and that kids can do too.
That's a great way to do it too.
Tomorrow.
Let's see. I'm gonna stop questions right now. Let me finish up the presentation because we're running short on time.
Oh man,
and then I'll hang here and answer some. Yeah.
All right, I'm out.
All right, take it easy. All right, so let me get out of this and let me move on. So I do have some, whoa, we're going really fast. Sorry about that. So I do have some student resources for you to take a look at. The links at the very beginning of the arrows are mine. Feel free to look at them. I will not give you my copy, but you can make your own copy. And you can edit these. And I'm going to tell you to edit these. The reason is because I know when I found these, a lot of them say for the student to download the app. We don't want them to do that. So make sure you edit these that are appropriate for your classroom. All of the pictures you saw of all the controls, I want to say thank you to UC Santa Barbara. That's where I got their little 2-pager on what those controls are. Some final notes, if you have any staff, students, or parents that are having some actual technical issues, you have them call this phone number, 661-789-6600. And our tech department, who's about the best in the world, will help you out. They are an awesome set of people, and so if you guys or if any of your students and parents need help, they'll help you out. Learning at home, that's the link that the tech coaches made and have had input with and been sort of sharpened over the last week or two to include all the work that your students have been probably working on at home with their current homeschool parents. So that's what that top link is. The second link is the PSD EdTech website. With the EdTech website, I can schedule a meeting with one of the 4 coaches, try to find one of the coaches that are open at the time that you are available to meet. So like you can see, Steve is completely booked. I'm completely booked as well. Tomorrow I'm a little bit more open, although that'll be tweaked this afternoon. But we'd be more than happy to work with you and help you out. This is what we're here for. And to be honest, this is really what we've been built for. The webinar recordings, all the webinars we've been doing over the last week, when you click on that, you'll see the hot dog. Here's all of our recordings. And so I'm going to sound like a millennial here for a second, but I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, because whenever we create a new video, we put it there and it will notify you of our new video. And if we can't answer it or you can't get a hold of us, I will bet you someone has created something and you can Google it.